The market stank of smoke, sweat, and fear. Metal cages lined the dirt street, stacked too high, each holding something alive. Some cages rattled with strange birds, some hissed with scaled beasts. But the largest cage stopped Yalin in his tracks. 3 young alien girls huddled together inside. Their skin was smooth and blue, their feline ears switching at every sound. Bright golden eyes stared back at him, wide with a mix of fear and defiance. They were small, graceful, wearing rough scraps of cloth. And they were marked for slaughter. A crooked sign above the cage read in several languages: meat stock, fresh, exotic, expensive. Jalen's stomach turned. He had seen cruelty before. He had fought in wars, traveled through ports where life was cheap. But something in the way the smallest one clutched the arm of the tallest made him pause. They weren't animals. They were aware, intelligent, and terrified. A traitor leaned on the cage, his grin showing more greed than teeth. Interested. Human, rare stock, tender, worth every credit. Jalen's hand tightened on the strap of his worn bag. Inside was everything he had left: a few ration packs, a broken cum, and the last of his credits. Enough to get him to the next colony. Enough to survive another month. Certainly not enough to waste on a fantasy. But as he turned to walk away, one of the girls stepped forward, her hands gripping the bars. She didn't speak his language, but her eyes spoke volumes: desperation, a plea, and something he hadn't seen in a long time, trust. He stopped. His mind screamed at him to keep walking. Every instinct told him this wasn't his fight. But the memory of her gaze burned into him. The traitor noticed his hesitation and smirked. You want them, human? I'll make you a deal. End of the day, they're going to the butcher. You've got until then to decide. Yalin didn't answer. He walked away from the stall, weaving through the crowd, but each step felt heavier. The noise of the market faded into a dull roar in his ears. Images of the girls, their ears pressed back, their eyes following him, wouldn't leave his mind. He found himself standing at a food stall, staring at a steaming bowl of stew he could barely afford. But even as the smell reached him, he had no appetite. He looked at the credits in his hand. Enough for food, enough for a ticket, enough to keep moving, or enough to buy their freedom. The thought was madness. Even if he freed them, what then? He had no ship, no home, no plan. They'd be stranded together in a world that didn't care whether they lived or died. But he also knew if he walked away, he'd never forgive himself. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the market. The day's business was ending. Traders began covering their stalls. Customers drifted toward the gates. And the butcher's cart rolled in, its cold metal surface shining under the fading light. Jalen's heart pounded. He could still walk away. No one would blame him. No one would even notice. But his feet moved on their own, taking him back through the crowd, back to the cage. The trader saw him return and laughed. Changed your mind, human. Yalin set the small pouch of credits on the table, opened the cage. The trader's eyes widened, then narrowed. You're serious? Open it, Yalin repeated. His voice was low, but there was steel in it. The trader shrugged and pocketed the credits, waving to a guard. The lock clicked, and the door swung open. The girls didn't move at first, frozen by disbelief. Then the tallest stepped forward, her movements careful, almost hesitant, as if expecting a trick. Jalen extended his hand. Come on, you're free now. They stepped out slowly, the smallest one clutching his sleeve the moment she reached him. He could feel her trembling through the thin fabric. As they walked away from the market, he knew he had just given away everything he had left. And yet, for the first time in a long while, it felt like the right choice. The market gates closed behind them with a heavy clang, and the noise faded into the night air. The streets outside were quieter, but Jalen's senses stayed sharp. He knew freeing the girls wouldn't go unnoticed for long. Traders didn't like losing profit, and butchers liked losing stock even less. The three alien cat girls stayed close, their bare feet silent against the cracked pavement. The smallest one still clung to his sleeve, her golden eyes darting at every sound. The middle one kept glancing over her shoulder, ears twitching in quick jerks. The tallest walked just behind him, her posture tense but watchful. He led them down a side alley, away from the main road. "We can't stay in the open," he muttered, mostly to himself. They didn't answer. He wasn't sure they understood, but they followed without question. The air was cooler here, carrying the faint scent of rust and rain. A sudden noise echoed behind them, the slap of boots against the ground. Yalin spun, catching sight of two shadowy figures moving fast in their direction. "Run," he said. Sharply, motioning ahead, the girls bolted without hesitation, their movements quick and graceful even in fear. Yalin followed, weaving through the narrow lanes until they reached the dim outline of an abandoned warehouse. He pushed the door open, ushered them inside, and barred it from within. The interior smelled of dust and oil. Faint moonlight filtered through broken windows, casting silver stripes across the floor. The girls huddled together near an old crate while Yalin checked the corners for danger. After a moment, he returned to them. "We'll stay here for the night." The tallest one studied him for a long moment, then touched her chest. "Sira," she said softly. She gestured to the middle one. "Vea." Then to the smallest, who peered at him from behind her arm. "Neri." He understood their names. "Yalin," he replied, tapping his own chest. Sira nodded slightly, her expression still guarded. Vea tilted her head curiously, and Neri clung tighter to his arm, as if memorizing the sound of his name. Outside, the distant echo of voices carried through the night. Someone was searching. Jalin's grip tightened on the small knife at his belt. He had nothing else to fight with, but he wouldn't let them be taken. Hours passed slowly. At some point, Neri drifted to sleep, her small frame curled up against him. Vea leaned against Sira, her eyes half closed but ears twitching at every creak. Yalin didn't sleep. He kept watch, his thoughts restless. He had no credits, no supplies, and 3 lives depending on him. The galaxy was not kind to the weak, and tomorrow would bring questions he didn't yet have answers for. But as he glanced down at Neri's sleeping face, he knew one thing. He'd made his choice, and there was no going back. Morning came with pale light slipping through the cracked windows of the warehouse. Yalin rose quietly, his back sore from the cold floor. The girls stirred one by one, their golden eyes catching the faint light like embers. He gave them a small nod. "We can't stay here, too easy to find." They didn't speak, but they understood the urgency in his tone. Sira took the lead in gathering the others, Vea holding Neri's hand as they stepped into the street. The air outside carried the smell of cooking fires and fuel, and the market in the distance was already waking. Ali and kept to side alleys, avoiding crowds. He needed a ship, something fast, something unregistered. But ships cost credits, and he'd spent his last to free them. That meant finding someone who owed him a favor. There was one name. A mechanic named Horvath, who once served in the same border patrol unit. Not a friend, but a man who respected debts. If he could be convinced, they might have a chance. They reached Horvath's shop just before midday. The metal door slid open with a hiss, revealing the heavy-set man covered in grease. His eyes narrowed the moment he saw the girls. "You've got trouble, Yalin." "I know," Yalin replied. "I need passage, quiet passage." Horvath wiped his hands on a rag. "Passage costs. And you've got nothing to pay." "I have my word," Yalin said. "And if you don't help me, those traitors will have my head by nightfall." Horvath studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Word is already out. Market boss put a bounty on the girls, alive or dead. Said you stole high-value stock. You won't make it to the docks." Sira stepped forward then, her gaze fierce. "We can fight," she said, her accent thick but her meaning clear. Horvath looked between them and shook his head. "If you're serious about getting off-world, you'll need more than a fight. You'll need to vanish before they see you coming." Yalin leaned in. "Then hide us." Horvath's jaw tightened. "I can try. But if anyone sees them here, we're all dead." Before they could plan further, the sound of engines roared outside. Jalen's hand went to his knife as Horvath glanced toward the door. Shadows passed across the thin window slit. Armed men moving quickly, their voices low but urgent. Horvath cursed under his breath. "They found you." Yalin turned to the girls. "Back room, now." Sira and Veya pulled Neri toward the shadows while Yalin moved to the front. His heart beat steady but hard. He had no credits, no ship, and now no time. The only way forward was through whoever had come for them. Asterisk, the shop door slammed open, metal hitting metal with a sharp clang. 3 men stepped inside, all armed with short rifles and wearing the red armbands of the market boss's enforcers. The smell of dust and engine oil filled the air as their boots scraped across the floor. The leader, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, glanced around. "Where is he?" he asked coldly. His eyes shifted to Horvath. "We know he came here. We know he has them." Horvath's voice was calm, but his grip tightened on the wrench in his hand. "Plenty of people come here. You think I track them all?" The man stepped closer, his rifle now pointed casually at Horvath's chest. "You don't want to lie for a dead man, old friend." From the back room, Yalin listened, his pulse steadying. He turned to Sira, Veya, and Neri. "Stay low. Number. Matter what happens, you don't come out until I say." They nodded, but Neri's hand clung to his sleeve until Sira gently pulled her back. Yalin slipped out from the side, using the shelves of spare parts as cover. His boots were silent on the floor as he closed the distance. When the leader turned slightly toward Horvath, Yalin struck one hard blow to the man's wrist, sending the rifle clattering across the floor. The other 2 enforcers reacted instantly. One firing a shot that punched into the wall, the other swinging his weapon toward Yalin. Horvath moved like a man 30 years younger, his wrench cracking across the side of one attacker's head. The fight was fast, messy, and loud. Yalin drove his shoulder into the last enforcer, slamming him into a stack of crates. The man crumpled, groaning in pain. Horvath didn't waste time. "You've got minutes before more come. There's a cargo shuttle leaving in 20. If you get there, you might live. If not." He let the sentence die. Sira appeared from the back room, eyes scanning the bodies on the floor. "We go now," she said firmly. Jlen grabbed a rifle from the floor and handed it to Sira. "You know how to use this?" Her answer was a sharp, practiced motion of checking the weapon. Veya and Neri stayed close behind her, their ears twitching. Nervously, Horvath led them out the back door into a narrow service lane. The sound of shouting in the streets was getting closer. Yalin kept his eyes forward, every step pushing them toward the spaceport. The air was thick with heat and the smell of fuel when they reached the outer fence. Beyond it, the shuttle sat on its pad, engines already humming. But between them and escape stood a line of armed guards scanning the crowd. Sira's voice was low but steady. "They're expecting us." Jalen's jaw tightened. "Then we'll give them something they're not expecting." The line of armed guards was tight, their rifles ready, eyes scanning every face. The shuttle's loading ramp was already retracting, its engines vibrating the ground beneath their feet. If they didn't move now, the chance would vanish. Jalen glanced at Sira. "We split their focus. You take Veya and Neri to the left side, keep low. I'll draw them to me." Sira's golden eyes locked with his. "If you fall, we fall with you." He shook his head. "Not today." Before she could argue, Yalin stepped out into the open, walking fast toward the checkpoint. The nearest guard spotted him and raised his weapon. Stop, Yalan didn't. He broke into a run, firing a burst from the stolen rifle into the dirt. Beside the guards. The sudden noise made them scatter for cover, shouting orders. The moment their attention shifted, Sira moved, leading the younger girls in a swift dash along the outer fence. Bullets cracked against the metal crates around Yalan. Sparks flying. He dropped behind a stack, returned fire, and kept moving. His goal wasn't to win a fight. It was to keep every eye on him until the girls were through. One guard flanked him, aiming for a clear shot. Before the man could fire, a blur of blue and gold slammed into him. Sira had doubled back, her rifle butt striking the guard hard. "You were supposed to run," Yalan said through clenched teeth. "I told you," she replied, breathing fast. "If you fall, we fall." Together, they pushed forward, covering each other. Vaya and Neri reached the shuttle ramp first, waving frantically for them to hurry. The engines roared louder, the ramp beginning to lift. Jlen and Sira sprinted the last meters under a hail of fire. A round grazed Jalen's arm, burning a line across his skin, but he didn't slow. He shoved Sira onto the ramp, grabbed the edge, and pulled himself up as the shuttle lifted from the pad. Below them, the guards shrank into the distance, their shouts lost in the roar of engines. The city fell away, replaced by the endless stretch of sky. Inside the shuttle's dim cargo hold, the girls collapsed against the walls, their chests heaving. Sira sat beside Yalan, her gaze fixed on him. "You spent everything for us," she said quietly. "Now you've given everything else." Yalan met her eyes. "I didn't give it, I chose it." Her ears tilted slightly, the closest thing to a smile he'd seen from her. The shuttle's intercom crackled. "Next stop, Freeport." No questions asked. For the first time since the market, Yalan felt his muscles relax. They weren't safe yet, but they had a chance. And that was more than they'd had yesterday. The shuttle landed on Freeport under a sky streaked with the pale glow of two moons. The air here smelled cleaner, with the faint tang of sea salt drifting from somewhere beyond the docks. The crew unloaded cargo without a glance at Yalan or the girls, just as promised. No questions asked. They stepped onto the metal platform, the sound of the engines fading behind them. The port was busy but different from the markets they had fled. Traders here moved with less suspicion, and no one wore the red armbands of the market boss. Still, Jalen's eyes swept the crowd, his instincts refusing to rest completely. Sira stayed close, her steps silent and watchful. Vaya walked just ahead with Neri, the younger girl clutching her hand tightly. They looked less afraid now, though. The memories still lingered in their eyes. Yalan led them to a quiet corner near the edge of the port. "From here, you're free," he said. "No one owns you, no one hunts you. You can go anywhere." Sira's gaze didn't waver. "And you? Where will you go?" He shrugged slightly. "Haven't thought that far." "You should," she said, stepping closer. "Because wherever we go, you should be there." Vaya nodded in agreement, her golden eyes bright. Neri stepped forward and slipped her small hand into his. She didn't speak, but the gesture was enough. For a moment, Yalan felt something settle in his chest, the weight of days on the run lifting, replaced by a quiet certainty. He had spent everything he had to free them, but in return, he had found something worth more than all the credits in the galaxy. He looked at the three of them, their feline ears catching the moonlight, their eyes fixed on him not as a savior, but as someone they had chosen. "All right," he said finally, a faint smile touching his lips. "Then we go together." They turned toward the city beyond the docks, walking into the unknown with steady steps. The night air was cool, the stars above bright and endless. For the first time since he'd set foot in that cruel market, Yalan didn't feel like he was running away from something. He was walking towards something new. And he wasn't alone.